Radio Televiséireann. You're watching RTÉ One.
Good evening and welcome to the programme. Later, why the Minister for Justice is concerned about information being leaked by the Gardaí and how changes in taxation could hurt the film industry here. But first, the Taoiseach told the Dáil that there'll be no softening in the government line on Dublin's bin protesters. He said the law would be enforced, even if it were inconvenient for some. The Labour leader Pat Rabbitte began by suggesting that some kind of compromise might be possible.
Can I ask him, if I understand him correctly, to say that then this matter will be left to the Gardaí and the courts? Is that the only solution that we're offering in a situation where waste is being piled high on the streets, causing a public health hazard, and political activists are being sent to jail, and conflict is being created, fomented between residents? And I think one of the more important recent developments is the fact that council workers are being taken off the payroll. Can I ask the Taoiseach if he agrees with me that an initiative is required in this situation that would involve the organisers calling off the blockade and the Minister terminating the order for non-collection that triggered these extreme protests?
The Fine Gael leader Enda Kenny wanted to see people who've paid their bin charge get the service they deserve.
Up to 80% of people have paid in Dublin City Council area. This is not an industrial dispute, and the situation has resulted where council workers have been left confronting protesters with disturbing consequences which were evident last night. Now, if the Minister for Justice has spoken to the Garda Commissioner or to the Garda authorities about seeing that the service is provided, can the Taoiseach confirm that the Minister for Justice might report to the House later on today about the monitoring of this situation, so that those who have paid for a refuse service and who expect a refuse service to be provided can have that service provided for them, and that we do not descend into a situation, as the Taoiseach referred to yesterday, where anarchy might prevail.
The Taoiseach agreed and insisted that the protesters were in the minority.
I wouldn't like to give the impression here that there's vast numbers of people involved in anarchy or protests. I mean, in yesterday there was 20 in Fingal. In the total Dublin depots, the information that I've received, Rathmines, Collins Avenue, Grange Gormit, David Road, and I'm not sure if that's all of the locations. There were about 60 people involved. And in Dublin, in South Dublin, there were 20 people.
Deputy McGrath, allow the Taoiseach without interruption, please. This leader's question, Deputy, and have to wait until your turn comes. Taoiseach without interruption, please. Sorry, Deputy McGrath. Deputy McGrath, you've been disorderly.
In South Dublin, there's about 20 people involved, and in Dunleary there was about 40 people involved, so about 150 people involved.
And he said there'd be no government cave-in.
The reason the refuse on the streets of the citizens of Dublin has not been collected or not been dealt with in a normal, efficient way is because there is a small group of protesters in a city of 1.25 million people blocking it. Yesterday, less than 150 people involved. So that is the reason. Now, Deputy Rabbitte, I know whenever there's a difficulty, the easy thing to do is look for the easiest solution and to stand down the law. Well, if he's asking me the question, do I agree with that? I don't. The law is the law, and when it's inconvenient for people, or if there are political activists who decide that they don't like the law and they want to flout the law, then we should stand down the law. That's what Deputy Rabbitte has suggested. I don't agree with that.
Green Party leader Trevor Sargent turned to the planning process and blamed Fianna Fáil for lengthy delays.
And when he has the gall to blame Swans for causing opposition to the bridge at Malahide Estuary, would he not agree that his own neck is much tougher than any Swan, given that it was Ray Burke and his Fianna Fáil cronies which rezoned the original road line for that road? And the problem was not the Swans, but it was the rats in his own party that have difficulty telling right from wrong.
The Taoiseach accused the Greens of being anti-progress.
Can call you in relation to remarks about my party, I'll ignore those. But can I say that Deputy Sergeant has the hardest neck of all, because Deputy Sergeant was responsible with a small group of people, in my view, of putting on hundreds of millions onto delays and protests. And you should come in here. You should come in here and explain why you caused that. And the fact is, in spite of your efforts, we've one of the best motorway stretch in this country.
The Minister for Justice today showed little sign of relenting on his clampdown on Gardaí who leak information to journalists. Michael McDowell told the Dáil that it wasn't just a matter of good conduct, but a question of upholding the law. Conor Mark Kavanagh has the details.
Mr McDowell rejected any suggestion that he had cast a slur on the name of the Gardaí and the media.
The vast majority of members of An Garda Síochána perform their duties to the highest standards. However, as in any organisation of 11,900 members, a small number can abuse the trust placed in them. The purpose of Head 26 is to address serious concerns about unauthorised disclosure of information to the media by a very small number of Gardaí. Such disclosures are not acceptable in any professional police service, as they can frustrate criminal investigations and prosecutions, lead to a breakdown in the public's confidence and trust, and constitute a gross and unnecessary invasion of the privacy of victims of crime. They can also expose the taxpayer to the payment of substantial damages. My concerns about such disclosures were in fact originally raised by the previous Attorney General, who is now Commissioner in the European Union, David Byrne, who communicated with the previous Garda Commissioner on the matter in 1999. The Commissioner, for his part, indicated that it would be of considerable assistance to An Garda Síochána if the law were strengthened to facilitate the proper investigation of wrongful disclosures of confidential information by applying to such cases the detention provisions of the Criminal Justice Act of 1984.
He was pressed further on the matter by the Labour Deputy Joe Costello.
Minister, really you're so far over the top, it's unreal in relation to this issue. And I think what you should do is really withdraw this section, withdraw this head altogether and start again. Because arising from that then, you went down the road to accuse journalists of bribing the Gardaí for information. And again, you've put that very strongly and very trenchantly. And as a result of that, you have cast a slur on both the media profession and on the Gardaí themselves.
I want to reject completely the suggestion made by the Deputy here that I have in any sense cast a slur on members of An Garda Síochána or in general, or on the members of the media in general.
Mr McDowell said he would not privatise the prison service, but that he would be looking at other services such as prison transport.
I am examining very, very carefully how economies can be made in relation to the peripheral support services which are now done, so to speak, in service. And I regard it as my duty to do so. I don't believe that it would be appropriate for me to, on some kind of ideological basis, to exclude the possibility that major savings could be made, say, for instance, transporting prisoners between courts and custodial institutions. I would stress in that context that I'm looking at other possibilities as well, such as the introduction of video conferencing for remand hearings and video visiting at a distance of prisoners and video conferencing between lawyers and their prisoners as well, and that a committee which has been established under the chairmanship of Ms Justice Susan Denham is looking at that very issue.
He said state properties like Devereux House in Rosslare were sold at a loss because the alternative was to leave refugees in boxes on the streets.
At the time that these purchases were made in the life of the last government, this country was inundated by a totally unexpected phenomenon, which was a wave of refugees. And in those circumstances, decisions had to be made very quickly to accommodate those refugees, because the alternative, which was a fairly stark alternative, was to leave refugees on our streets or in hallways or in cardboard boxes around our cities. It was for the government of the day to make decisions to accommodate what was a wholly unanticipated phenomenon.
The Minister was also questioned about his relationship with the Lord Mayor of Dublin.
There was not one angry word, there was not even one cross word. It was the most cordial and happy meeting that I've ever had with 4 public representatives in relation to criminal law issues ever. There was no suggestion on either side of ill feeling or anger of any kind. And I am at a loss to explain. I am at a loss to explain why the media should think that anything that I have ever done in relation to any public representative would be discourteous or in any sense arrogant or bullying. I don't, as the Deputy knows, behave in that way and never have behaved in that way. So the fact is, now just because Deputy DC has come off worse on a few occasions, I've never been offensive to him, never ever. And I would, in fact, on occasions I've been too kind to him.
Not you. The same as. It's not.
I assure Deputy Costello, I'll ask Count Porter, that my meeting with with the Lord Mayor of Dublin and his fellow city councillors was entirely cordial, entirely good-natured, entirely constructive, and I don't believe that he has ever suggested otherwise.